Poor Nancy Pelosi. After trying to create a victory lap and alleging that the president had committed, well, bribery.
A courageous public servant. The devastating testimony corroborated evidence of bribery uncovered in the inquiry, and that the president abused power and violated his oath by threatening to withhold military aid and a White House meeting in exchange for an investigation into his political rival.
Their star witness on Friday, who herself claimed to have been kneecapped by the Trump administration.
If our chief representative is kneecapped, it limits our effectiveness to safeguard the vital national security interests of the United States.
Well, she turned right around and kneecapped the Speaker of the House.
We apparently move on to Ukraine and quid pro quo, culminating yesterday when the Speaker announced that the President would indeed be impeached and removed for office for bribery. And with that statement, I would now feel compelled to ask you, Madam Ambassador, as you sit here before us, very simply and directly, do you have any information regarding the President of the United States accepting any bribes?
No.
Do you have any information regarding any criminal activity that the President of the United States has been involved with at all?
No.
In her Friday morning opening statement, Marie Yovanovitch, the former ambassador to Ukraine who was fired, or I should say relieved of her duties by the Trump administration, proved herself to be just an embittered ex-employee. Didn't understand why she got fired, because again, part of that liberal elite, that oligarch, that State Department, those non-elected bureaucrats that think they, not the president, set foreign policy. They, not the president, know what's best for our national interests, national security. She, one of those firmly entrenched, lifelong bureaucrats, public servants, kind of like a tenured teacher that you can't get rid of. She got fired. And she was forced to admit that the real reason she was bitter with the Trump administration was she was an ex-employee. She had no firsthand direct knowledge of anything. Nothing. There was really no point for her even being there. And when she did have to answer direct questions, do you have in your contacts with officials from Ukraine, have any of them ever said to you that the president did anything to put pressure on them? No. Well, there you go. But Nancy Pelosi did something interesting, and the Democrats on the committee have, of course, picked up on it, following, I'm sure, a closed-door directive. They've gotten away from quid pro quo. They're not using that phrase anymore. Now it's bribery, 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 bribery. And Nancy Pelosi, again, she was just all over that.
A courageous public servant. The devastating testimony corroborated evidence of bribery uncovered in the inquiry, and that the president abused power and violated his oath by threatening to withhold military aid and a White House meeting in exchange for an investigation into his political rival.
I believe this is for two reasons. I'm sure they've engaged someone like a Frank Luntz or somebody like him to do, a poll, a survey, get a group of people together and test out certain phrases and how they test with them. I'm sure the average person doesn't really fully grasp or understand what quid pro quo is, so they had to come up with a term that people would recognize. And I believe bribery was chosen for two reasons. Number one, just about everybody thinks they know what bribery is. Number two, it is the constitutional word used for the impeachment and removal of the president. If you look up the constitutional requirements or guidelines for impeaching a president, bribery is listed. If the president has received bribery, if he has used bribery. And so now they're wanting to make sure that when they talk to the American people about this being constitutional, they want to use a constitutional word. But again, and a big thumbs up to Representative Chris Stewart for literally kneecapping again the former AG and making the case, look, has the president done any of the crimes in which the Democrats who brought you here have accused him of? This was absolutely a classic, excellent takedown.
Welcome to year 4 of the impeachment proceedings. I'm sorry that you've gotten drugged into this. For 3 years, we've heard these outrageous and frankly unbelievable accusations regarding Russian collusion. Accusations that we now know are absolute nonsense. There was no basis at all, despite promises from some members of this committee that they had secret proof that would prove this collusion. And again, we know that it was nonsense. But now in year 4, we apparently move on to Ukraine and quid pro quo, culminating yesterday when the Speaker announced that the President would indeed be impeached and removed for office for bribery. And with that statement, I would now feel compelled to ask you, Madam Ambassador, as you sit here before us, very simply and directly, do you have any information regarding the President of the United States accepting any bribes?
No.
Do you have any information regarding any criminal activity that the President of the United States has been involved with at all?
No.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that directly. The American people know this is nonsense. The American people know this is unfair. And I have a prediction regarding this. I think that public support for impeachment is actually going to be less when these hearings are over than it is when the hearings began. Because finally, the American people are going to be able to see the evidence. And they're going to be able to make their own determination regarding that.
Once again, Scripture is proven correct, and the truth shall set you free. Now, of course, this didn't sit well with Adam Schiff. Obviously, he has created this narrative, this phony cover-up of the coup takedown of the president. First it was Russian collusion. Now it's supposedly Ukraine collusion. The thing that I just find so amazing, has no one actually thought all the way through that Russia and Ukraine hate each other? I mean, they hate each other. So if the president helps Ukraine, how does that help Russia? And if the president helps Russia, how does that benefit Ukraine? Well, it doesn't. So who is the president supposedly guilty of colluding and bribing with for the benefit of the United States? If he helps Russia, that's not going to sit well with Ukraine. If he helps Ukraine, that, of course, is not going to sit well at all with Russia. So we go from Russian collusion to Ukraine collusion. It can't be both. But again, these are the Democrats, and though they think they're so slick and so smart, they're really just, I believe, can't understand how God has literally ripped back the veil and exposed them for not only the cockroaches they are, but for how incredibly stupid they are as well. That said, Adam Schiff, of course, frustrated that the victory lap he tried to take earlier in the day over the, quote, kneecap comment. The president kneecapped me. The president kneecapped me. Even called a special press conference over it. By the end of the day, he's got his star witness up there admitting under oath, no, the president hasn't committed bribery. The president hasn't committed any crimes. In his frustration, he kept trying to stop the GOP from asking questions. And Jim Jordan just wasn't having any part of it.
Did you have any conversations, Ambassador, with Victoria Nuland or Secretary of State Perry about what was going on in 2016 and this majority of Ukrainian politicians being for candidate Clinton and not and opposed to President Trump?
No, I did not.
No one did anything. No one did anything. You see why maybe the president was a little concerned about what went on in Ukraine? And you couple that with the corruption level that we know exists in Ukraine, you add to that this idea that he's not a big fan of foreign aid, why he might be a little concerned about sending the hard-earned tax dollars of the American people to Ukraine?
I'm sorry, is there a question there?
There was.
Okay, could you repeat it, please?
Maybe we can kind of see why the president was a little concerned when you have the highest-ranking officials in the government, the ambassador criticizing him, parliamentary member Lashchenko criticizing him, when you have Avakov, the guy who first told you about Giuliani, criticizing him. All this going on, and when you couple that with the concerns he has about corruption, the concerns he has about Europe not doing enough, the concerns he has about reluctance to send in the hard-earned tax dollars to any country,
Jordan,
frankly.
I have indulged you with extra time, but
I appreciate it.
My indulgence is wearing out.
I appreciate it.
There is a question, right?
Our indulgence wore out with you a long time ago, Mr. Chairman.
Well, after 2 days of this circus, one has to wonder if over the weekend Nancy Botox Pelosi has not hunkered down in their private little bunker where, the Dems, in their cauldron of lies, what they're going to try to do to save face on this. Now, again, they will get some cover from the media, that Yovanovitch was ganged up on, it was sexist, it was this, it was that, a bunch of crapola. But at the end of the day, I think the American people see her for what she is. She's an ex-employee who's ticked she got fired. She doesn't have any direct knowledge of anything that went on. And she admitted under oath, the president hasn't done anything. So now you got to wonder, does Nancy pull the plug? It will be interesting, won't it? Hey, thanks for watching this video. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. Smack the bell so that you get notification of my next rant. Give us a thumbs up. And don't forget, spread this video everywhere and anywhere as YouTube continues to shadow ban us.